And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Atoll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we've got another pile of interesting two-wheeled EV news this week. Mostly two-wheeled, one electric boat motor. But let's see. Going through the list, we've got some cool new electric bikes, some moped style, some city style, some commuter style. In addition, we just got word that LiveWire, Harley-Davidson's electric motorcycle brand, has lowered the price on their upcoming electric motorcycle. So that's a pretty neat development. And we'll also be talking about that really cool electric outboard from Mercury. So a bunch of interesting stories. Where are we going to start, though, Seth?
All right. Electric Bike Company unveils low-cost, U.S.-built, 28-mile-per-hour moto-style e-bike.
So if you're not familiar with Electric Bike Company, you guys might have seen a couple of times we've toured their factory there in Southern California. They're actually located in Newport Beach, and they build all of their bikes there. So it's one of the very few actually American e-bike companies out there. And so this is a really cool launch from them because not only is it a different style of bike, it's a moped sort of moto style. Lots of times we call these Super 73 style because they look very similar. So not only is it a new type of bike for them, but it's coming from a company that actually builds these things in the US. There's, a bunch of Californians in that factory, lacing wheels and putting together batteries and running wire through frame and, all those steps that we normally think about happening halfway around the world is happening right there in Southern California. So we'll run through this new bike real quick. This is the Model J. All of their e-bikes are Model something or other. And basically, it's a sort of moped style bike. It's got that long bench seat, though it is a single seater. And it's got a lot of the components that we've come to know and love from Electric Bike Company. That means hydraulic brakes, optional torque sensor, 750-watt motor. It's got actually three battery options. The base is a 672 watt hour, which I think they say goes something like 65 miles on pedal assist, but you can add a second or third battery to get double or triple the range. Out of the box, this is a 20-mile-an-hour bike, so it satisfies the class 2 limits, but you can unlock it to class 3, which would bring it up to 28 miles per hour. So a lot of interesting components on this bike. A nice tried and true moped style design. But the really beautiful thing here, in my opinion, is the price. It's the bike launches at an MSRP of $14.99, but while it's still in the pre-order phase for the next 5 or 6 weeks, there's a promotional price of $1,199. So $1,200 to get yourself basically a US made moped style e-bike is pretty crazy. And the last sort of, really interesting little wrinkle to this bike is the extreme customization. Not only is this a cool bike, but you can basically customize it to look like anything you want. They've got something like 40 different paint colors to choose from, or you can actually send in your own. Like if you have a paint sample, they can mix paint to make whatever color you want. And then each of the components can be individually painted. So, you can say, I want my fork this color and my chain guard this color and my frame that color. And they'll even paint a helmet for you. They've got their own helmets that have front and rear LED lights, and they can paint those up however you like. It's kind of crazy how much customization goes on here. But then from the components on the bike, you can even customize. So you can choose to upgrade to a torque sensor. You can add a suspension fork. You can go with a single speed or a 7-speed drivetrain. You can choose different types of handlebars. They've got like BMX style bars and then taller ape hangers like you're on a chopper. Different headlights, baskets. It's kind of crazy just how much customization you can do here. You can see Seth here, if you're watching the videos, going through and designing, basically whatever he wants on this bike. It's almost crazy. It's like a video game where it's like choose your character, and you can like,
Yeah, it's like Avatar, building an avatar almost.
right. I feel like there should be a random button, and you just get like looks like someone threw up a paint swatch onto the bike here. It's
Yeah,
pretty crazy, the customization.
designers could sell their own versions almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And the neat thing is that Electric Bike Company, first of all, they've got dealers all over the country, so that's not just their showrooms in California. They've got these set up in independent bike shops all over, but they've launched their like sort of design experience in a lot of these bike shops. You can go in and there's this big like 70-inch touchscreen TV that has this interface on it. So you can just be like clicking away on this giant TV in bike shops, designing the bike you want. And this is the Model J we're looking at, but they've got like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 different models of bikes at this point that all of them can be customized in must be like thousands and thousands of different combinations and permutations here. Even like the tire color, you can choose your tire color. How crazy is that?
Yeah, even white walls.
There you go. I mean, and this is the thing that really makes them different is that, when you've got a bike that's produced in some Asian factory, maybe you've got 3, 4 colors and a couple different frame styles, but you can't have too many options or inventory becomes a nightmare. But when you're actually producing them and packaging them right there in the US, you can build whatever the heck you want because customers can fill out a customization thing and you build it that day and mail it out from the factory. So it's, to me, this is just awesome to see this level of customization from a US based company.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of why they can do that, right? They're building them here uh, on spec and can get it out pretty quickly after ordered. It's just it's kind of amazing how little that costs. If they're doing it for I guess 1,200 or 1,500, why aren't more companies doing something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember talking to Sean, the founder and CEO, a couple of years ago about that. And what he said is that in some ways, building locally reduces a number of costs because he doesn't have to spend a lot of time with oversight overseas.
Hmm.
Doesn't have to hire inspection companies, doesn't have to deal with things that are produced incorrectly. A lot of companies have had issues where they'll bring in, several containers of bikes that have problems that made it past third-party inspection. So there's while you're paying higher labor costs, in other ways you're saving a lot as well. So to him, I mean, the dollars and cents seem to work out, and as we see in the prices here, they're able to sell these for a pretty reasonable cost. And this is
So,
one of the lower cost bikes. They have several that are more in the like $2,000 range, but this is still pretty amazing.
although you can spec it out pretty high, especially with 3 battery options.
Oh yeah, what do you got? thirty five hundred
So
dollars already?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
the
well, that's the
battery's
thing
really
is, I think they're counting on, a lot of people really specking these out, and then they make a lot more profit, obviously, when you add on and you customize.
right. Um, so I noticed the tires are all 24 by 3. There's not a upgraded 4-inch wide tire or anything, right?
Yeah, I think they really went with that sort of like split the difference 3-inch on this one. I
Right.
don't think they're expecting people to take this off road too much. I think they really see this as like, someone who would buy a beach cruiser but wants something a little more mopedy. And Sean
Hmm.
even told me that they're really trying to focus on a younger ridership with this because they started as basically a beach cruiser company, and so beach cruisers, or especially with electric beach cruisers, it's more of like a silver haired market these days.
Hmm.
And so I think they're really trying to like, work their way into Super 73's demographic of like, college dudes riding around on mini mopeds.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the speed. The motor is standard, right? And that's I'm assuming 750 watt.
Yeah, it's 500 continuous 750-watt peak.
Okay. That should scoot it along pretty well. And the rest of the bike looks fairly simple. Does it have rear brakes? Because I don't see a cable going back there, but that might be a
Yeah, I believe it does, but I also noticed that the customizer here doesn't seem to show it. Also, like when you click, 7 speed, it doesn't change some of those things, but
right.
the rear brakes being left off is a bit odd.
Yeah, and you don't see any wires coming from the to the motors. Maybe it's wired on the inside of the frame, but overall, I mean, it looks like a very simple design. Obviously, it makes it easier to assemble here in the U.S. You're just a couple screws away from having a basket, having a rear uh, fender or whatever that is. So I think it's a smart plan, and I think this form factor is like quite popular. So it should have quite a bit of customers looking at this thing, and I especially like the wood paneling kind of stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, for a while they had the wood sourced from a company I think in Oregon that made wood fenders and wood chain guards. They try to get as many of their parts from the US as possible, but I think they've got about a dozen countries where different components come from.
Yeah, and I imagine the batteries and motors are probably still coming from China.
Yeah, they are, but interestingly, the batteries, so they have like the cells welded up in China, but they just come in like bare heat shrink, and they actually assemble them into their packs to make sure that they're, like wired in correctly and everything. So they sort of do final battery assembly, which is, for an e-bike company is going pretty far since most of these are just black boxes.
Yeah, it looks great. When are we gonna see the first deliveries, or when are you gonna have a review?
So they said 5 to 6 weeks is the current pre-order time. I don't think they
Hmm.
have any yet. But I'm hoping we can maybe get like a cool Electrek paint job on one of these once
Ooh,
they have them in. That would be neat.
nice.
That or maybe a USC color one for you.
There we go. All right. Maybe yeah, maybe Jamie will go spy on them. He's right there in Newport. All right, moving on. Veloc. How do you pronounce this? Velotric.
I've been
Velotric.
saying Velotric.
Velotric Thunder 1 launched as fast, lightweight urban e-bikes with torque sensors and Apple Find My.
So yeah, the Thunder one here, there's actually two of these. There's the Thunder one and the Thunder one step through. Though that orange one is the step through, and it's really more of like a mid step, I'd say. These are Velotric's first really sort of lightweight, stealthy urban bikes. They've done an urban bike before. I think it was the Discover, but this one it almost doesn't look electric when you first look at this thing. It's a really nice stealthy design. What we're looking at there is instead of like a big bulky display, it's got like a minimalist display. It's got the built-in battery. And there's some interesting tech built into this as well. Of the two different models, one has Apple's Find My integration, which basically means it works like a built-in AirTag. You can track the bike down as long as it's in a fairly populated area where people are walking around with iPhones and other Apple devices. But then the step over version has GPS built into it. So with that one, if you lost your bike anywhere, you'd be able to track it down, like even, in the middle of the woods kind of thing. So definitely some cool tech there. There's also a torque sensor, I believe, which is another nice feature to have, especially on a bike without a throttle, because that means you're going to get really nice, really responsive pedal assist, which to me is just super important when I don't have a throttle. I want to make sure that the bike responds really well and I don't have that situation where you start pedaling and you got to wait like 2 pedal revolutions before any power kicks in.
Yeah,
So these are, I believe, the price is I think 14.99 for the sort of lower end model, though it's still pretty nice, and then 17.99 for the step over, which has the a few nicer parts like the GPS. I think it's got a slightly larger battery, if I'm not mistaken, or at least it has a little bit better range. But overall, the bikes are fairly similar. And to me, these just look like really nice, stealthy e-bikes. I personally really like bright colors on bikes. And so that orange one has definitely caught my eye, both as sort of like a fun, expressive thing and also as a safety feature, in my opinion,
yep.
just to be, sort of seen out on the road. So I'm glad to see the Velotric has again gone back to these bright colors. When we covered their Nomad, they had a color called Mango, which is like smack you in the face yellow, which I loved.
This one's called
Um,
Lava.
Lava, there you go. They have good names for these things too. Like anyone can call the bike yellow, but calling it mango, I like that. So lava is good too. So yeah, I mean, I think these are really, really nice bikes. I'm going to be testing the Thunder one, I believe the step through version, the orange one there soon. So I'm excited to get on that one and see how that is. But both of these are really, just intriguing to me as stealthy bikes. What do you think, Seth?
I my first impression, especially with the Find My component, was like this is kind of throwing off a little bit of Van Moof vibes with the with all the integration and uh, tools like the I think it was the what is it the keyless unlock, GPS tracking, the ride customization, the modes, ru- all that stuff. The little add-ons were kind of, I don't know. It just seemed and the design a little bit like
Van
Van Moof.
Moofian.
Um, that said, uh, these are you know obviously bikes that made for the mainstream. So and the price is a lot less than a Van Moof, so looks good to me.
Yeah, I used to like almost get offended on behalf of some companies when they would sort of get ripped off, but now I've started to see it so much across the industry that it just seems like they're trendsetters, and then these things become adopted as new e-bike trends. So,
Hmm.
the thing like Find My, it was awesome to see VanMoof incorporate that, but now it's like I want to see that in other bikes. I want to track my bike as easily as I can, my headphones or my iPhone kind of thing. So, I like seeing some of this get adopted, even if it's annoying for the companies that are the first movers.
Right. I was having a conversation with somebody on Twitter about Find My and the advantages and disadvantages of having Find My built in by the manufacturer versus just throwing a $25 Find My, under the seat or underneath something. Or uh, I know you're working on a story with Find My accessories that you can put on your bike that stealthily conceal the little Apple AirTag. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, should it be built in, or maybe it's something that you should add on?
Yeah, well, I mean, here's how I see it. So an AirTag costs what, like 25 bucks
Right.
approximately?
Yep.
So the technology in it must cost like $4 maybe.
That
So
sounds about right for Apple. Yeah.
yeah, I can't imagine it would add too much to the price. Like, let's say they didn't include it. I can't imagine you would save too much. So the option of having it there, I think is great. If it becomes just like a standard thing that e-bikes are known to have, then perhaps that just makes it, that much more annoying for thieves and they skip over, especially if they see certain bikes and they're like, oh, well, that one I know, I'm not going to steal a Van Moof because I know it's got Find My. I'm not going to steal a Velotric, I'll
Hmm.
take a rad or something. Then maybe that just becomes a theft deterrent in itself because just having the Find My in there, like let's say someone does take your bike, like are you brave enough to go knock on someone's door and be like, excuse me, giant man, can I please have my bike back? There's only so much help with knowing where it is at the time, but hopefully it becomes a theft deterrent. And in that way, I love to see it there. I don't think it takes away too much, and I'd love to see it, included more often, in my opinion.
I mean, the downside though would be like, say Velotrek puts theirs, in the down tube or something. Like, theoretically, a thief could go and say, "All right, I know where Velotrek hides their Find My," and go, just go rip it out or just disable it with a screwdriver or something. And by hiding it in the rear reflector or in the front light or whatever, um, you're kind of like making each bike hiding spot of that thing kind of unique. And it would take a potential thief a little while to find that Find My.
Well, maybe you need one in like a really good hiding place, and then you just sort of like lazily duct tape one under the seat. So they find that one and they're like, all right, I'm in the clear. But that's just your decoy AirTag.
Right. It's not even a real one.
Just a quarter you painted white.
Yeah, or maybe just paint on the side of your bike this bike protected with AirTag and have like a little logo. Maybe we'll make some
Yeah,
stickers, and you won't even have to have an AirTag. You just have the sticker. Kind of
there you
like
go. I like that.
yeah, we inherited an ADT security system from our previous owners, and we still have the signs up. So that kind of idea,
It's a deterrent. It's like the dog in yard sign.
of course. Yes, perfect. All right, yeah. Well, we like to see it. Love to see the other stuff integrated as well. When are we going to see review of this guy? Do you think?
So I think these are ready to ship now, if not soon. So I should be getting a review of this one pretty shortly.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right. Moving on. This off-roading electric bike can go 200 miles and uses an electric car charger.
So this is Watt Wagons. We've covered them a little bit before, and this is actually another US based company. I believe they're in Boston, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
But this is a very interesting bike. It's called the Hound, and I mean, it certainly is an electric bicycle. It's not one of these like, motorcycle style bikes, but it's got a super powerful motor. That is the Bafang M620, which is one of the highest power mid-drive motors you can get, but perhaps more impressive is the larger battery option. There are two options. The smaller one is just 884 watt hours, which is still larger than average. But the really interesting battery option is the 52 volt 60 amp hour battery. 60. That works out to 3,210 watt hours of capacity, which is like mind blowing on an electric bicycle. That's about as much battery as I have in my GoGro electric scooter, which is like a highway capable scooter. And that works out to basically 100 miles on throttle or about 200 miles on pedal assist. And
Mm.
because the battery is that massive, they actually include both a fast charger that you can just plug into the wall or a connector for a J1772 plug. So you could actually charge it at a like a level 2 public electric vehicle station, which I don't think I've seen on any other electric bicycles. I don't know that this is a first, but if not, it is one of the first bikes to include this type of charging connector. Have you ever seen that before, Seth?
No, but I've seen adapters for those things that would, move on to regular bikes. I mean, you there's adapters for those chargers that'll just turn into a regular plug. But as you mentioned, like that's super convenient for public charging, but also if at your house you happen to have an electric car, you can also just plug that into your bike as well. That makes pretty easy, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for a lot of people that have either started with electric bikes and then gotten an electric car, or other way around, they've gotten into electric vehicles and then they learned about e-bikes. They're kind of complementary products. So to be able to just use the car charger you already have in your garage to quickly fill up would be super convenient.
Agree. Uh, it would also be nice to, as my wife would say, remove some of the 1,500 bike chargers that are laying around my garage, and just use the one that we already have for the car.
Yeah, I imagine most people don't have the problem we have of
Right.
like all the chargers getting tangled as you try to figure out which one
Yep.
is the right one. But yeah, for the people that do that know our pain of having too many e-bikes, that's another nice advantage there. So yeah, I mean, this is from a number of different directions. This is a really cool bike, super powerful, incredibly long range. Admittedly, probably more than most people need, but like if you're like an Uber Eats rider or someone who uses your bike for work and you're riding all day, like I can see 3,000 watt hours being useful. Very expensive though. I believe these are about $5,500, and then the price goes up from there depending on what other accessories and higher performance features you add. So obviously this is not a cheap bike, but we're talking about an American-made, ultra specialized bike here. So take that for what you will. It's hard for me to pass judgment on these super expensive bikes because they're really sort of a niche situation. Like someone who needs a specific bike, there's not a lot of other options out there. But that's a pretty penny to be paying.
Yeah, so the Bafang Ultra on there, we've seen Bafang Ultras, especially with big batteries like this, put out a lot more power than 1,000 watts. Um, is that a controller thing, or so I'm sorry, the it goes up to 3 kilowatts and 3.5 kilowatts peak, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot to mention that this one actually has a different controller than the stock Bafang controller. It's the X1 controller,
Oh yeah,
which
that's right.
allows it to put out about 3,000 watts of power. So and that motor, if anyone's familiar with, it's it's widely known that it's much more powerful than Bafang limits it to. And so there are several companies that make these aftermarket controllers, and they basically unlock the potential of that motor, which in this case is about 3 times the nominal power rating.
And they call it what, the Archon X1, I think.
I believe so. I forget off the top of my head.
Okay, so and what do you think this thing at 3.5 kilowatts, uh, and a huge battery? Obviously, that's not going to still go 100 miles on throttle, but how fast are we looking at here? Are we thinking like 40
So I don't think they publish a top speed, which is probably, a
for
liability
legal
thing.
reasons? Yeah.
Yeah. But I imagine unlocking this thing. I mean, even on Bafang's controller, I've gotten this motor up to like 36 miles an hour. So on an aftermarket controller, I mean, the sky's almost the limit.
Right. I mean, it is a burly bike, big wheels, like big, uh, I think you're probably not looking at highway speeds, but probably getting, into the 40s pretty healthily, maybe up to 50 if you crouch.
Yeah, you'll have to see what they limit it to because at a certain point, like it's not a matter of motor anymore. It's like how much braking power do you have, that kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah, the wheels become a liability, especially
There
with
you go.
spokes and stuff.
Yeah, bearings on bicycle wheels at 50 miles an hour.
Right. Yeah, you want to keep it down a little bit. But that looks great. Really looking forward to. And have we done a Watt Wagon review? I feel like they have a lot of interesting bikes.
Yeah, I don't think we have. They're certainly a lower volume manufacturer, but we really need to get a Wattwagon loaner out and try that out because they you're exactly right. They have some really interesting models and they're doing things that a lot of other companies aren't.
All right, road trip to Boston coming. All right, moving on. This fancy Scandinavian electric bike just launched in the US for 190 $109 per month.
This is the Vasla pedal. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If anyone is Swedish, let me know if that's wrong. I don't know how you pronounce two dots above an A, but this is an e-bike that first launched in Europe. This is a Swedish company, and they've just launched in the US with both a direct-to-consumer and a subscription model. So you can go on their site in the US and you can buy this bike. I think it's like 2,600 bucks, or if you live in New York City, which is where their US headquarters is, you can actually do their subscription model, which means that for somewhere between 109 to 129, depending on your length of subscription, you get this bike with just a monthly payment. And so it's kind of a cool deal because this is certainly a much nicer bike than most of the direct to consumer bikes we see. If you compare this to like a Rad or Electrek or an Aviton, it's certainly higher quality from a number of directions. It's got that nice torque sensor. It's got built-in GPS. It's not terribly powerful. It comes from a European background, so it's got a 250-watt nominal motor, but they did increase the speed to 20 miles an hour over the bike's 15-mile-an-hour speed limit in Europe. It's got built-in LED lighting that's integrated into the frame. It's got a pretty neat frame design. There's the Gates carbon belt drive instead of a chain setup, which to me I love, but it also means that it's going to be a single speed. So for some people, that's going to be a downside. In New York City, there's not like too terrible hills, so you'll probably be all right with a single speed. But if you're, buying this thing out in San Francisco, that might be a bit of an issue for you. So all in all, like a pretty nice looking bike, 2,600 bucks or so, a little more premium, but it does come with, it's a nicer European bike, which generally costs more, and it's got a lot of nice parts there. But to me, the real interesting part here is that subscription model, which we just don't see too often in the e-bike space yet. There are some scooter companies that are getting into it. I know that Unagi is doing it, and they've had a lot of success there. But with e-bikes, we haven't seen it a lot yet. And so for someone that wouldn't be able to afford a 2,700 e-bike, especially not paying right now up front, but wants that kind of a quality bike for 110 bucks a month, that's a pretty cool way to do it. And if you only need it for a year or so, maybe you're moving to New York City for a year for something, you could spend a little over 1,000 bucks and get a really nice bike without having to worry about maintenance and that sort of thing, because it's all covered as part of that subscription. I don't know, Seth, would you ever subscribe to a bike, or you want to just like buy it and it's yours?
I would be afraid I would get in trouble for breaking something, but I do like the price. I do like the idea. And the bike kind of it's got, like, I know every bike has some sort of vibes, but this one kind of reminds me of fuel bikes a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's got that sort of like main unibody, I guess is the term for that, of that
Hmm.
single strut design. It definitely has some fuel vibes. I agree.
And, the other thing that obviously European bikes going 15 miles per hour to me is almost insane, because I feel like I would, I can do that with my legs on flat ground, but easily. Uh, Moving it up to 20 miles per hour is obviously an improvement, but it's a little bit of a bummer that this doesn't go up to 28.
Yeah, I imagine that they're probably using the same motor that they use in Europe,
Right.
so I don't know if they would be able to even, eke out 28. If they did, I imagine the top end would have some pretty poor acceleration.
Right. Yeah, they couldn't even claim it. I do like I like seeing a lot more 24-inch wheels as well. That's I think an interesting size. Uh, I know Sondors on their Mad Mods goes 24. There's a few other bikes out there, but it gives you like some of the benefits of a bigger wheel, but also keeps the size of the bike down a little bit. So a lot to
Yeah,
like here. I like the
I, I
simplicity.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these bike sizes are sort of converging into this, middle ground. Like, with the two sides of the coin with 20-inch and 26-inch wheels, we're starting to see more 24s. For a while, it was either like, 2-inch or 4-inch tires. Now we're starting to see a lot more of these 3-inch sort of
Yep.
semi-fats.
Yep. Like it. All right. Moving on. Want to buy an e-bike with a safer UL battery? Your options are slim but growing.
Yeah, the biggest news we've heard about UL rated batteries is that juiced bikes out in, I think they're San Diego, if I'm not mistaken. Um, that Juice Bikes has now UL certified all of their batteries. So they're one of very few companies that are doing this. One of Velotric's bikes, not the Thunder, but another one that we reviewed in the past, is UL certified. All of Bosch's batteries are UL certified, but there aren't that many other. Jackrabbit, another bike or a micro bike we've covered. And so, this is becoming a bigger and bigger issue because we're hearing more about electric bike related fires. And the biggest cause for these fires is that there are these really cheap, poorly made batteries on some of these super low end imported e-bikes. And so the best way to circumvent that problem is to say, all right, we need to have UL certified batteries because Underwriter Laboratories basically sets the standard for how these batteries need to be produced, the connections, the shock loading, waterproofing, basically anything that could damage these batteries to the point of causing a fire. They have to be built to that certain standard to prevent that. And there's rigorous testing. It's expensive. It's one of the downsides and one of the arguments against it is that it simply costs these e-bike companies a lot of money, and it means that smaller e-bike companies are probably going to be at a significant disadvantage when it comes to competing. But if you're talking about the greater good here, the ability to say, all right, all of these e-bikes are going to come with safe batteries that you don't have to worry about. You can plug it in and have peace of mind is a huge deal. So it's great to see that Juiced is joining this short list of companies. I'm surprised, frankly, to see that there are some even larger companies that aren't there yet. I know Rad Power Bikes has talked about being in the process of UL certifying, but we just haven't heard about this from too many other electric bike companies. It seems that this it's not like this issue has been unknown. Like it's always been in the back of many people's minds that yeah, lithium batteries, there can be a small fire risk, but there just doesn't seem to be a lot of quick movement. So great to see that Juiced is one of the companies stepping up, but I'm frankly surprised to see that we haven't seen more. What do you think, Seth?
Yeah, and Juice, typically they don't have a lot of showrooms or any showrooms. Um, you would expect like Pedagos and higher end. I think a lot of Brosa Motors batteries don't have the UL certification. So it was interesting that Juice actually stepped up and did this. And the issue is like the time, the effort, the cost of getting UL certified. Bike Electric bikes don't have a ton of margin to play with. So it's good to see that Juice is doing it. Another reason Juice might be doing this is they have that inside battery, back up your house kind of thing. So theoretically, if you're bringing your battery in your house, you kind of want to make sure that it's extra safe. Um, we talked to a battery expert a couple weekends ago, and he was saying that a lot of major manufacturers aren't doing the due diligence on batteries, but the reason why so many bikes in New York are catching on fire is because, as you said, there's a really low cost, cheap imported bike batteries then you couple, poorly made. Then you couple that with third-party chargers that aren't necessarily made for those batteries, and then you couple that with the lots of salt that New York puts on its roads and sidewalks, and the salt getting inside kind of corrodes some of the connections. So it, you add all that up, and it becomes a problem. Theoretically, with the UL certification, those battery boxes are going to be a lot, uh, more tightly put together. Salt theoretically won't be able to get inside as easily. So, love to see this going in the right direction. And I've talked to people recently who say that they won't buy a bike that isn't UL certified. So, or a bike battery, I guess. So, all these things are kind of becoming more and more relevant. And bravo to Juice for stepping up here.
Yeah, I think this will definitely become a bigger trend, and it's good to see that Juiced is sort of, on the right side of history by being an early mover in this segment.
Yeah, and we're also like big fans of their battery stuff. They, as I mentioned before, they have that thing that kind of is an inverter or whatever that will allow you to use your battery to back up your house. So we still need to test one of those out. I think maybe we should give them a call on that.
Yeah, I don't think they're commercially available yet,
Okay.
unfortunately.
All right, let's move on. Harley-Davidson's LiveWire S2 Del Mar electric motorcycle price drops, and the EU price announced. And I believe we know a new Del Mar customer.
Yes, so I personally find this very exciting, exciting enough that I've put down a reservation for the bike. But quick little history lesson here. So LiveWire is Harley-Davidson's sub-brand for electric motorcycles. They announced this bike last year, and it was targeting a price of $15,000. However, later in the year, they ended up walking up the target price to $17,000, which was a pretty big bummer for a lot of people. It's, percentage wise, it's not like, massive, but the whole point of this bike was it was supposed to be targeting a younger, less affluent customer and widen the market base for Livewire. And so they just announced yesterday, I believe, that the price had moved back down to 15,499. So, within $500 of that original price estimate, which, considering it's been, a little over a year and there's been significant inflation since then, I think is pretty good to see them staying that close. They also announced a timeline where they're expecting to roll out the first 100 bikes, which are the launch edition, by, I believe it's July. And then afterwards, we'll follow on with the general production. They'll also be announcing the final specs in June. I don't know if this is as common in the electric car industry, but we still don't know about half of the performance specs of this motorcycle. Like, we don't know the true power. We don't have final range figures. We don't know the battery capacity yet. So there's a lot of unknowns left out there. They've told us it'll go approximately 100 city miles. And I can tell you that, having tested it myself, I know it will at least do faster speeds than are legal on any highway in the US. But I wasn't about to lose my license, so I can't tell you exactly how fast the top end is. So we'll be excited to, in June, hear the final specs of the bike. But at least for now, it's shaping up to be an even better deal than we were expecting after the price increase of a few months ago, I guess about 6 months ago. And personally, for me, especially as a new reservation holder, I'm just super excited about this bike because I love to see what Harley's doing here. I'm a big fan of this sub brand, and I think that, if Harley is to be saved, then it's going to be these electric motorcycles leading the way. But what do you think about this, Seth?
Yeah, I mean, it's tempting. Like I don't have a motorcycle license, but I'm always very tempted by these electric bikes. Obviously, taking the test on a gas bike would be a downer. So that's always kind of kept me from jumping on there. But both you and Zach have been like uh, really tempting me to get on a motorcycle. Although obviously, the family would disagree on if I should do something like that. As far as this particular bike, it looks amazing. The price is great. Um, I really think Harley needs to get these out the door. They people want them. The specs are great. I think, yeah, obviously they're not going to compete with like the $5,000 Sondors or that range, but this is obviously a much beefier bike. Um, and with the price, it's even kind of competitive with zero bikes and stuff.
Yeah, I'm really excited for where this positions LiveWire. I mean, the company is still sort of finding its footing after being spun out from Harley. So I think this launch will sort of set the direction for the company. So come this summer, we'll have a lot more or a lot better idea of where LiveWire is headed.
And how do you feel about the lack of DC charging? Is that something that you even care about, or is that?
Yeah, it's definitely a bummer. I would say that the range slash charging is the biggest downside to this bike for me. That being said, I think that it's important to look at this bike in the lens of what it's designed for. And unlike the LiveWire 1, which has the fast charging and can be ridden like a touring bike, this is really meant more for urban riders, for commuters, that sort of thing. And so, no one's going to be taking this on a cannonball run kind of thing. But for someone that has, a 50-mile commute every day, you could certainly do it. And even if you want to do longer rides, they're telling us level 2 charging of 20 to 80% in a little over an hour. So, it's not a brief time to wait at a charge stop, but it's not like you have to stop and charge all night to refill the tank. In an hour and a half, you can get almost all the way charged again. So it's certainly doable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's maybe one of the reasons why not to do DC charging. If you can get in an hour pretty much fully charged, uh, maybe you don't need DC.
Yeah, well, the smaller battery certainly helps with that
Yeah,
compared to electric cars.
right. Well, that's cool. All right, we've got one final story today. Water testing reveals performance of Mercury's first electric boat outboard motors.
Yeah, this one's also exciting for me in a different way. Electric boats, especially these smaller electric boats, are a really promising addition to the boating industry, in my opinion, because the smaller boats, you don't need as big of motor. And so you can get away with a less expensive electric motor, less expensive batteries. And Mercury, which is a big name in outboard engines in the boating industry, has released their first sort of transom mount small electric outboard. It's called the Avator 7.5E. It is really low powered to the tune of about 750 watts. So we're talking about like the size of an electric bicycle motor. But they've released their first performance testing data. And basically, it shows that the outboard performs approximately equivalent to their 3.5 horsepower gasoline powered outboards. So, like we've seen before in the boating industry, you can get somewhere around like 3 times the performance of the power rating compared to combustion engine outboards, which just don't have the same torque profiles, which is very important when you're trying to move this heavy water out of the way. The system is not inexpensive. I think it's somewhere around $5,000, which that same 3.5 horsepower Mercury motor is probably something like 1,500. So, like many electric vehicles, still more expensive than their gasoline counterparts. But this is a very new industry, so that's going to be expected for the first few years. But it's still a really cool design, and the fact that it also comes with swappable batteries, I think, is a big plus here, because the same way a lot of people would go out for a day fishing and they'd bring, a little red gas can to top up their small gas tank, you can just bring another battery or two. And when the battery runs dry, pop in a new battery. The range you'll get, it's very speed dependent. So with their performance testing, they found that at full throttle, these 1 kilowatt hour batteries get about 5 miles of range, or about 1 hour of operation, because it moves about 5 miles an hour. But if you drop it to a quarter throttle, that increases to 19 hours of operation, and something like 35 miles, I think it was. So you're moving it, something like 1.5 miles an hour here. I mean, it's basically a trolling motor at that point. But the point is, if you're not, going full out, then even a 1 kilowatt hour battery can last you for a while. So for people who are fishing and that sort of thing, where you're just, moving along slowly, you might not even need to bring a spare battery. But the whole system to me is just super exciting because it means that it's going to open the door to all of these new small electric boats that can start using these new electric outboards.
Yeah, it's awesome to see Mercury getting involved here, not being forced to by some other player, but actually like leading. Um, Obviously, I'm thinking about your home solar powered boat. Is that something you're thinking about throwing on there, or is this too much for that thing?
So it's certainly tempting. I mean, the power would be in the right range. It wouldn't mount very well to it because my Chinese boat is kind of a weird structure. And so I'll probably end up going with like a powerful trolling motor that I literally mount right onto the rudder shaft, which is not the way like you would normally do it.
No.
But most boats are going to be set up like the ones we see in this picture that have that flat transom in the back, and
Hmm.
then it's just you literally just turn a like thumb screws to tighten these outboard motors on, and so most normal boats this would work fine. Mine, unfortunately, is just a weird structure, and this probably won't work for mine, which has me all sorts of sad.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good thing for the industry. I really like the idea of these, especially like around harbors. You have these like little taxis that take you out either to a bigger boat or to the other side of the harbor or to an island or whatever. Perfect for that kind of case. And obviously these are more expensive up front, but the idea of not having to get gas and oil and that kind of maintenance and just probably plugging this in at the dock uh, seems like a good trade-off, and probably the return on investment, you probably break even point is like a year or so out. So I think there's a big case to be made for these. And obviously the big thing is no smell, no vibration, quiet. You're not going to piss off anybody. So a lot of pluses here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point with the maintenance. I mean, these, especially these small gas-powered outboards, after a while, they just start having so many problems. Like, you don't want to be out there on the water, like trying to clean off fouled spark plugs, kind of thing. Like, this just works. It's like the guts of a power drill or what is in this motor.
Yeah, I remember fishing when I was young, and my friend's dad was like trying to start like pulling the cord and trying to get it started back up, and then I think he fell in the water one time. Just like uh, kind of silly,
Yeah, I mean, it's like turning on a cell phone, and
right?
that's the kind of technology in this thing. They even have an app, so it's like on your phone, you can be checking your battery and stuff.
Yep. All right, so we are done with the stories. Let's move into questions. Um, Extra hero, I like the electric bike company has something that Micah will never mention: those sweet white wall tires. What?
I
Why?
love white walls as much as
Yeah.
the next guy.
What's wrong with white walls, Micah?
Yeah, I love all color walls.
Yeah. All right, Carl in San Diego. I was going to knock the electric bike company basic look, but the customizing makes this a good way to go. I agree. That's pretty sweet. Seth, you're familiar with how Beats by Dre would send custom headphones to celebrities for promotional purposes that worked well. I'd love to see a company do this with bikes. I don't know. Apple doesn't really make bikes, but I would like. I think electric bikes would be really cool to see Justin Bieber or any of those people that people seem to care about. Uh, I think he probably. I think somebody was telling. Yeah, Eric at Luna was telling me that Justin Bieber had like 10 Surons or something. I don't know why that popped in my brain, but by the way, I think I might have told you, but I did get a chance to ride the Talaria, and we're gonna talk about that in a future episode. But it's every bit as powerful as you could ever want.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear about that. I hope you'll follow up with like a first ride write up as well, because people want to know what that was like.
Yeah. Custom electric pain would be nice. I think they meant paint probably, but maybe not. Yes, we we'll talk to electric bike company about that. Maybe we'll get some stickers and sell an electric version. Altman 22, I don't know why e-bike with cadence sensors are not programmed better. The startup and release timing can be tuned to feel pretty transparent, and I use dynamic cadence sensing on my own bike. That's a good question. If that's possible, all the cadence sensors I've had are pretty bad, where you have to pedal almost one full revolution before they kick in, and then the worst part is like when you stop, they don't stop. So, uh, what do you know about that? Is there more innovation to be done in the cadence sensing world?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we often blame cadence sensors, but Ultima 22 is exactly right. It's really more an issue of the programming. And there are a few companies that have really sort of squeezed the best you can get out of cadence sensors. My wife has a Rayvolt bike with a cadence sensor, and it almost feels like a torque sensor with how responsive it is off the line. There's like almost no lag, and so it certainly can be done, but the downside is that it still can't determine how hard you're pedaling. So while better programming can make it feel a little bit more responsive and intuitive, it doesn't mimic the true nature of a torque sensor, which is really using sort of your legs as a throttle and varying the power according to how much power you're delivering.
That's a good point. All right, Carl in San Diego, I think Bluetooth tracking via Apple, Samsung Tile is cheap and low power, but a slave to individual ecosystems. They depend on like users to work well. Yeah, that's kind of a good point. If your bike is going through a forest, you're not going to be able to follow it via Amazon, Apple, Samsung Tile. You need that GPS for that, and I guess that's kind of the reason why Velotric Velotric has those two options. So if you're a city dweller, Find My is probably fine for you. If you're out in the woods a lot, maybe get the dedicated GPS. Sound right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's you're certainly limited with the Find My. It's never going to be as good as GPS, but in a densely populated area, I think it'll work pretty well.
All right. Altman 22, that cantilever rack looks like a compromise. A load on the back end will put a lot of stress on it. I think he's talking about the electric bike company still.
No, I think that was the
Oh,
Wattwagon actually,
the
which,
Watt wagon.
yeah, I agree. It did have a bit of an odd looking rack setup back there. We've seen it before a bit, but yeah, it was certainly it stuck out a lot more, and it certainly did look a little more cantilevered than many bikes.
All right, Carl in San Diego. Wouldn't a retailer selling an overclocked Bafang invalidate the motor warranty? That's a good question. I think, in the case of Luna, for instance, they guarantee their own, modifications. Uh, I don't know what the story is with Watt wagons, Micah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. A lot of these companies, like, if you buy a bike with a Bafang motor and you have an issue, you're not going to Bafang, you're going back to the company who built the bike. They're like a sub supplier of Bafang. So in this case, Wattwagen would be the one sort of guaranteeing the motor. And I'm sure if they're doing these modifications, then they're the ones standing behind it. Though I do think I remember seeing they had a shorter warranty than a lot of companies, which
Hmm,
might have something to do with it.
right. All right, Extra Hero. People don't know this, but whenever they buy an e-bike named, sorry, an e-brand named e-bike, it's very useful to find the appropriate Facebook group for the company and use that wisdom of the crowds. Uh, I think that's a good suggestion. I would note that sometimes the company of the e-bike is running the Facebook group, so any bad or uh, you know not great reviews or comments sometimes disappear. So keep that in mind. Maybe more generalized groups would be better, or just Google searching. Has that been your experience, Micah?
Yeah, I like when I see the sort of the unofficial forum of, blank bike because it's
Yep.
actually started by riders kind of thing. So I'll often look for those.
Yep. I agree. Carl in San Diego, I know you really want a full e motorcycle, but for the guy who think 4K and 5K bikes are expensive, it's hard to see good value on Del Mar. Well, I mean, Del Mar is like, I just don't put it in the same class is those low cost, the Surons and the Metacycles. I think it's just a different world. And Micah, you're kind of the expert in this area. You put your money down on the LiveWire Del Mar. Maybe you can delineate that a little bit more. Oop, I lost your audio.
There we go. I'm
There you
back. There's a dog barking outside. I
are. Okay.
unmuted. So yeah, one of my biggest pet peeves is sort of price comparisons between different classes of products. So like it just to me it breaks down that you can't compare, an e-bike to a motorcycle or lots of times I'll talk about, high cost electric mountain bikes and someone will say, well, a used dirt bike costs less. And it's like, well, those are really hard to pedal though. So, these are very different types of vehicles and I don't think you can really compare them. And when you talk about, how much one costs against another, it's not even apples and oranges. It's like comparing apples to motorcycles. So to me, you're not buying a Del Mar because you want to ride it in the bike lane and because you want to get a good fitness workout. You're buying it because you want a really cool, innovative electric motorcycle from a brand that has, a really cool story behind it. And so to me, that's sort of what won me over. It's innovation, it's production, and the story of this new LiveWire brand. Comparing it to an electric bicycle, I don't really see any basis for comparison.
Yeah, even the the super low cost, lower power motorcycles are just totally different things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right, Fred Karma's looking for a recommendation. I'd like a nice road or hybrid e-bike, looking for speed, efficiency, quality. Less than 4,000 would be ideal. What's coming to mind for you? I kind of think of like Ride One Up, but that's kind of low power for what he's thinking here.
Yeah, well, if you can go up to 4,000, then the specialized, I think it's
Turbo
the
Levo?
Turbo Vado
Avado, yeah.
is, or the Creo. They have a couple of like road and sort of gravel type bikes that I think the Vado would be really good. And I think those start at like three or 3,500. So, that's certainly a step or two up from some of these direct to consumer companies. But if you're willing to spend up to 4,000, which I know a lot of our readers aren't, so we cover a lot of the lower cost bikes as well. But I think that would be a really nice one.
And you could also go in the like power direction with like a Frey CC, um, with that's going to have bigger wheels. I think Watt Wagons has. I mean, basically, it sounds like you want a lot of speed, so you're looking at a Bafang Ultra type of motor. If you're not getting what is Specialized use on their bikes? I know they
Yeah,
use Rosa sometimes, but
yeah, I think they have their own motor design now, actually.
okay. Um, yeah, so my commuter bike is a Frey CC, about 3 years old now. It's got it's a great suspension, great uh, platform, but the Bafang Ultra sometimes likes to chew through the gears a little bit. It's a little bit more power than what typical bike parks are made for. So
It's hard to tame that motor.
yeah, it's hard to tame it. All right, moving on. Bikes are expensive. It's hard to see good value on Del Mar. Well, we kind of answered that a little bit. An Exceeder question: what will it take to get regen brakes on hub motor bikes? Want to take that?
Well, we've seen it a little bit. Rad used to on some of their models, but it generally requires having a direct drive hub motor, which is usually bigger, heavier, costlier. So with geared hub motors, which are like 99% of the hub motor e-bikes out there these days, unless you do something weird like removing the clutch which allows it to freewheel, you just can't have regen with those motors. And there are some companies that have done that. I think the Vancouver based Grin Technology, ebikes.ca, has a motor that does that. So there are solutions if you're looking for that, but most of the motors on the market that are used by almost every e-bike company just simply can't do regen because of the fact that they freewheel in the forward direction, which frankly most people would prefer, because in order to regen you have to basically run the motor backwards, which means if you're pedaling, you've got a much less efficient, harder to pedal bike.
Right. is it the trade-off. And we should also note that you're not going to get that much power back. The reason that most bike companies that build regen bikes do that is because it saves brake maintenance, which is good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, when I had a DIY e-bike that I used regen with, and generally I got about 5% return. So, like give me 5% more range, but at the end of the day, it's really like the brake savings were more valuable.
Right. And saves a lot of time as well.
There you go.
All right, that's
So I
it for
think
questions.
that does it for us. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back in another 2 weeks to have you back for another episode of the Wheelie Podcast. See you next time, everyone.